Okay, my friends, we are back live here on the radio. We're also simulcasting at prisonplanet.tv in living video color. Joining us from Hawaii is Mike Rivero. We're going to your phone calls coming up here in about 10 minutes on a host of subjects. Mike's very well versed and intelligent fellow, and you can get his perspective and my perspective, or give us your perspective on any of the subjects you raise. Now, continuing here with the point you were trying to get at, as we went to break concerning BP and where you see this crisis going, calling it the America's Chernobyl. One of our guests this week compared it to the Dust Bowl that we saw in the 1920s that populated California with Oklahomans and Texans and people from Kansas. I mean, definitely if the oil spill... well, I mean, give us your take on it.
Well, you're absolutely right. In the economic and sociological sense, this is a new Dust Bowl. The Gulf Coast states, every one of them has been contaminated with oil. And it's important to remember that the danger and the risk is far beyond the tar balls and the brown sludge that you can see. Because along with those contaminants, there are chemicals coming out of the well in large volume that are invisible, that are dissolved in the water, including methane, hydrogen sulfide, even arsenic is coming out of that well. And that's a tasteless, odorless, colorless material dissolved in water. So when you see these tourism boards and the governor of Florida standing out there and pointing at the clean water and saying, see, it's safe to swim in, that's not absolutely a given. You don't know that without laboratory tests. But the bottom line is the economy of the Gulf Coast states is absolutely destroyed. Even the $20 billion that they're talking about having for compensation claims is a drop in the bucket to deal with that kind of damage. We're getting reports that the claim centers for British Petroleum are very hard to find and still have unlisted phone numbers. They're just putting so many roadblocks in the way. We're finding out now that all those people who volunteered their boats to go out and try and clean up the spill and the wildlife, the bottoms of their fiberglass boats are being etched through by the correxant dispersant and the oil itself. There's no plans to compensate these boat owners for the loss of their boats and their livelihood along those issues. It's just a huge disaster, and BP can't handle it. MSNBC is once again trying to bring up the idea of maybe nuking the wellhead. Nobody's really sure what effect that would have, whether it would really stop it or just make the matter that much worse. You were mentioning in the last segment how British Petroleum is owned by the Queen of England, and I find it rather interesting. She's in New York today for just 5 hours. That's a heck of a flight two ways to spend just 5 hours in New York. And I know there's an overt reason for her to be there to address the United Nations, but I kind of wonder if maybe she isn't talking to some of the local British Petroleum people about how they're going to deal with this mess, because I don't see any way that they've got to stop it. The well casing is destroyed. The drill pipe is destroyed. We know there's a subsurface blowout about 1,000 feet down that's beginning to seep up through fissures in the ocean floor. It's out of control. I don't think they've got the resources to stop it.
But their government, I mean, they've got to be able to wave a magic wand and save us all. And we saw the government not let people leave New Orleans. We saw the government not bring them food and water, but come for their guns. Can you imagine what they're going to try if those hundreds of millions of gallons of oil starts coming into shore? I mean, we've only seen a tiny fraction of the oil actually hit shore, and that's been devastating. I mean, this is going to be like Armageddon if those hundreds of millions of gallons hit. And I'm already seeing video footage. Kurt Nimmo wrote a story about it at Infowars.com, troops patrolling Florida. There's troops and BP people already stomping around, bossing Floridians laying out in the sun around. I mean, what is having a bunch of troops with guns bossing people around going to do? I mean, this is going to be hellish. And then the feds are such control freaks and will only give the cleanup contracts to BP subsidiaries so they make money off of it. They're hell-bent on making money out of this crisis. And so I guess just the Gulf won't be inhabitable for 4 or 5 years until the oil rots away. And by then it'll be a ghost town, and it just won't matter because the elite doesn't care, and they'll just put a new puppet in because they don't care if we throw out their puppets. It's the corporate government that we can't ever get rid of.
Well, it's going to be longer than 4 or 5 years. I mean, if you go up to Prince William Sound where the Exxon Valdez ran aground, there's still oil up there. They cleaned off what you could see on the surface, but if you dig a hole in the edge of the water line or you pick up some rocks, it's still there. And all those cleanup workers who cleaned up after the Exxon Valdez, they're all dead, and they died of these illnesses that you get from exposure to these very toxic chemicals. And now we've got BP down there in the Gulf telling their cleanup workers they are not allowed to wear respirators or gloves because it looks bad in the press cameras. We've got CNN reporting they're being told they can get no closer than 65 feet to any of the oiled wildlife or the booms or the beaches. They're trying to they're more concerned about how this looks than by the actual damage being done to the environment. And as I said before, we're getting reports from some of our readers that British Petroleum just shows up with a truck of sand, spreads it along the beach to cover the oil, declare it clean, and then they leave. And, of course, the next time the tide comes in...
Mike, that's confirmed. That's why they've run off CBS, CNN, ABC, Fox, local newspapers, people that live there, because that's what they do. They are coming in and dumping sand on it on record. I mean, that's on record. And then I've got the press reports here where BP is on record with the feds, and they have the head of the Coast Guard threatening federal felonies on anyone that videotapes them, and they claim it's only so many hundred feet. But time and time again, it's reporters who are a quarter mile away. Then BP orders cops to chase them down and arrest them. I mean, I've got all the press reports and videos right here. I mean, it's just in America. I've got Anderson Cooper on video announcing, quote, the First Amendment is dead in America, which is actually true. But why are they just, it seems like they're trying to break our will.
Well, I think what it is they're afraid that if the American people were forced to confront the totality of the disaster and how badly it has affected all of us, not just the people in the Gulf Coast states, but it's destroying the entire economy. It's just, you know, the Gulf Coast fishing zones are pretty much shut down. Now it's coming up the Atlantic seaboard. We're going to be looking at famine and starvation here in the United States because we are very dependent on those coastal fishing waters, and they're being shut down because of all this contamination, and it's all going to come back. The American people are so angry with the government right now. This could be the final straw, just as Chernobyl was that last big step before the collapse of the Soviet Union. And so they're trying
Chernobyl, I mean, that's a good point, showed that despite all their fancy uniforms and the big red square parades, that the government was basically weak and pathetic, but only good at putting on a show. And then now Bloomberg reports 46 states bankrupt or on the verge of bankruptcy. USA Today expect lots of government layoffs at state, local level. I literally see more than 10 articles a day without even looking, Mike, and I know you see them because you're a news hound, and where they are laying off more than half the cops, more than half the firemen, where whole counties are announcing we're never going to fix another pothole. But then meanwhile, in one county they said, well, we'll have 44 cops left. We're getting rid of more than half. And the 44 that are left are only allowed to write tickets and raise money and run the jail. And there'll be one deputy per shift who's actually on patrol to help you, or 3 a day. I mean, this is treason. And how do they have these counties and cities under mind control where they've raised taxes and openly say all the money must go to interest to bankers because the central banks came in and sold derivatives to the cities? I mean, this is literally a road warrior scenario. I saw footage last week in Detroit of armed men with assault rifles guarding the unloading of trucks in Michigan at a grocery store. I mean, it is literally already road warrior in many areas. I mean, the Southwest is collapsing. The illegal aliens and the drug dealers know it's collapsed. They're just taking over. I mean, this country is in a hell of a shape here. And the corporate Borg is saying all is well, all is well, all is well. I mean, we're going to hell in a handbasket here.
We certainly are. I mean, a story this last week that shocked me, here on the island of Oahu, just down at the bottom of this hill that I'm living on, there is a 50-acre campsite of homeless people in tents, thousands of people living right along the north shore of Pearl Harbor. I knew we had a homeless problem. I had no idea it was that bad. It came to national attention when Dog the Bounty Hunter went through there and put it all up on national TV, and everybody is shocked to see the scale of the homeless problem here on the island of Oahu in Hawaii, and it's that way everywhere. It's just an ugly situation. The country's shutting down. And the part that annoys me is Barack Obama could stop this overnight, because he's got the authority to issue government-issued currency the way Abraham Lincoln did, the way John F. Kennedy did, the way this country was started, and remove our dependency and enslavement to the private bankers.
Well, I'm not for socialism. Great point, Mike. I'm not for socialism. But if we're going to give $28 trillion, and that number's 7 months old, that number is from January of this year, Bloomberg. If we're going to give $28 trillion to bankers who don't even deserve it and who are criminal, I mean, if they just gave everybody $30,000, and that's basically everybody's debt is, what, $36,000 out of this bailout. If they just gave us all $36,000, that would actually supercharge the economy. Instead, they're raising taxes, which is like coming up to a man who's having a heart attack and slitting his wrist. I mean, it's going to kill us.